I had as this was happening was, what if this group of people believed enough in the power of margins to find others at the margins who are willing to move, who are willing to restore, who are willing to not adopt that message of the dominant narrative that we have to fix this thing. From this location of being in the center. So here's my example. So in Ferguson, right? The idea in Ferguson was we don't have. So it's a majority minority city. 66% of the folks there are African American. One person on city council. 2 officers in the police department of 60 some odd folks who are African American. And the idea there was, as this thing was breaking out and we were thinking about longer term solutions and what was happening, their idea there was, if we just had African Americans who were in the seat of power, stuff would change. And sure enough, what they did was, in this last municipal election that happened in November, they did, African Americans who had been voting in the last 3 municipal elections at 9 to 11%, at this time turned out at 31%, and they elected 3 folks into the city council, right? So sure enough, that happened. But then I come to Baltimore.
Yes, hello. Right. That's right.
And I see the mayor. And I see the police chief. And I see the city council. State's attorney. And not that they're personally responsible, but then Freddie Gray still happened. And part of the understanding, you all get this, right? But part of the understanding is, because this isn't about one person in a seat of power, but this is about, Pastor, what you said earlier, it's about the systemic issues that have been underneath what's going on here, and we keep putting facade and facade and facade over, and then we keep putting people in certain places, and we never get underneath the root causes. And I believe that really the way you get under the root causes is, again, not from the center, but from the margins. Because here's what I know. The center demands your soul. It demands you to act in a particular way. That's not how we make change. Don't do it that way, Doc. You got to do it this way. It's got to be slow and methodical. And at the margins, you get to make up your own rules. My friend Michael said, you don't have to be prisoner to that nonprofit industrial complex that foundations run. Sorry. Didn't have enough power to move what we wanted it to. It's just another side of power.
Yeah, I just want to share that is another application of the power of fear, where people who fear that their position and their advancement and the evils of their materialistic and capitalistic desire to sit on top of people, their fear is also strong, but that does not discount the power that we've been granted by God, which allowed you to be victorious, and your victory was snatched away. It's very different than not going out and speaking to that truth.
That's right.
That's a very different thing. So we have, if it was going to be easy, we wouldn't be here. We would have missed all this love this morning. But, these are the things that make us shut up and go away and sit down. They're the things that discourage us. But we have to believe that in the crisis comes the victory.
Acting in love without power. Our anemic love is not enough. And let me tell you, from my very specific faith tradition, which is evangelical, and it tends to be white evangelical. We love people all the time, and we do this hospitality thing, and then when it gets into the place of making a difference in the public sphere, we pull back and we say, oh, that's too political. That's because we don't have an understanding of power.
Because I would submit
Thank
that
you.
there are many, many individuals who participate in that 400,000 who shifted their consciousness in the process in a way that they will never be the same.
Absolutely.
So in that, there's a certain, this thing is continuous.
Absolutely, and we're still going after it.
Yeah, it's
But
not.
can I just say, I want it to win.
I
Want it to
I
win.
understand.
Because from 2012 to whenever we can get it back on the ballot, I know that there are people whose lives are being wrecked by the fact that they're taking out these payday loans, which by their design are meant to shackle people. And let's just be real, it's to shackle black people. Because there aren't banking institutions in the neighborhoods where payday loans are. Right? So, I'm with you. Let me get 2 comments.
What I was simply going to say was that a part of the struggle that we're talking about with regards to defining the word power or defining the concept of power, for me, was begun in my Sunday school class. We were told that it was wrong to have power. We were told that only bad people have power. We were told that other people deserved power rather than that power should gravitate towards those who really have a sense of, have a God sense in themselves. And so for me, when I came to organizing, I stood against the idea of having power. Even though what I was trying to do was powerful.
Yes, sir.
And even recognizing, at least in my own faith, that Jesus was the greatest organizer ever. And so a part of my reconstituting myself was to understand that power is neither good nor bad. It is the ability to make a change or to make a move or to influence, whatever it is. But it is the use of power that actually determines its value. And so I have been, in the work that I've been doing in the city of
That's why I love Twitter. Because those people, those folks on Twitter, particularly the ones that are part of what's going on in terms of resistance, they're telling their story of resistance, and it's not being told by someone else. The organizing move here, I think, is this one of the organizing moves. We experienced one of the organizing moves earlier, recognizing the folks in the room and being together. Another one of the organizing moves is, who are the other folks that we're going to identify? To invite them to tell their story so that they can then have their seat at the table. In organizing speed, we call it one-to-ones. But all it is I'm going to get to know you, Victoria, and would you mind spending 45 minutes with me? I know you grew up in Baltimore. Tell me what it was like to grow up here. And what's your sense of what's happening in the city that you grew up? And then she gets to tell me her story. Not mediated by anyone else. And as she tells me her story, then I have an invitation. I'm a part of this radical, inclusive group that has decided to meet once a month. Because we think there's a shift that's happening in our city, and we want to be a part of defining what that shift looks like for people on the ground. Would you love to come with me to experience what that's like and see other people like yourself who are invested in that? And then she comes. And what I realize is that Victoria probably has relationships that she's going to invent first. If we do this well, radical inclusion is about the perpetual invitation to people who have been marginalized so that they can tell their story, to claim their power, so that we can act together with collective purpose.
Is speaking to me. You got juice, man. You're a good teacher. You got juice. And as I'm watching and learning and listening, I have to say, I cannot help but notice. Lester, the architecture here is beautiful. The architecture is beautiful, and that cross is really messing me up today. Right? Not that the Christian narrative is a dominant narrative, but it is something that's been in the atmosphere. And what I'm struggling with this power piece is, I think sometimes in us there is an inability, if we take this cross piece and this power thing seriously, an inability to rest with the fact that on its face, without Sunday, Jesus failed. Where there's always an attempt to dress it up and to put antiseptic on it. He failed. Easter rescues it. Because you the one said you want to do some theology, so I was coming just to be all nice. You got me all ginned up, man. Right? It's an abysmal failure on its face. And so what happens if there's a long space between Friday and Sunday, and Sunday does not occur on our watch? So I need some people who are going to go with me on Holy Saturday. Because it may not happen in our lifetime. No matter how much we gin it up, I mean, it's going to be all kind of exegetical maneuvering, and God is in this, but Jesus, my God, it's done. He died thinking that what? Done. And that's where many of these people are, right? That all these definitions of power, there's an utter sense of nihilism, that everything that is good has forsaken them. So I guess I just want to speak that I need some folk to help me, because I don't know that Sunday's going to come on our watch. I want to believe that it will, but if it doesn't, can we, like the women, still bring spices?
I got all kinds of answers. So first of all, let me start with this, because I think it's so much a part of who's in this room, right? Like, part of what I'm going back home to do, part of what I'm going back home to do is to say, you all don't understand that I was a part of this meeting on Saturday morning, and there were so many folks who were in the room who identified as LGBT, and they are part of this struggle. And they have been muted for so long, but not in Baltimore. So it is not an accident. Your point. It is not an accident that the first people who realized he is not in the tomb were women.
Right. That's right.
It is not an accident that the first person he appeared to was a woman.
Yes.
And it's not an accident that the person who told that story was Luke, who all throughout his gospel is demanding that we take seriously the idea that God is a God of justice and is looking for marginalized people to lead the way. Yes. That is not an accident. Right. The second way I'd answer you, brother, is to say this. Ask the Samaritan woman at the well if Jesus was a failure.
Right.
Ask the man lying by the pool of Bethsaida if Jesus was a failure.
Right.
Ask the people who lowered the man. They cut open a roof. Lowering him in. Or the woman who says, I just need to touch that cloak a little bit. All of this, and then Jesus asked if there's a film, right? So that's the second thing. Like, there is this thing that has already been said in this space, is like, there is this process of happening that it's not just about destination.
Right.
But to your point, brother, to your point, maybe one of the things God needs to teach us is that we spend too much time dwelling in Sunday and not enough time experiencing Friday and Saturday.
Friday was a trip.
Yeah.
And what you're helping me with, just personally, because you made a brilliant move there, which is a move that I don't think we made. So you turned it and talked about the way in which Jesus, maybe if he had, because the empire, the nails, I suppose, didn't allow the brother to do the move that you made. When you're in that kind of intense pain, maybe he forgot in that moment all he had touched. And maybe our problem is we sometimes forget all those whom we've touched, even as we feel that we are disempowered in our own failure. And that's why so many preachers have so much dysfunction in their own lives.
Right.
Because the nails in them don't allow them to do holy remembering.
That's good.
And. Everybody marched in 19... We act like the March in Washington in 1963 was this easy decision that all of us... that it was not hard to make. When you had civil rights leaders saying, Dr. King, you're going to mess up what we've been laying down. If you listen to some of the narrative now in Ferguson, born on the backs of those folks who were getting beat down, it's like everybody was on those front lines. The decision to sustain and be present is a decision that costs. It costs. It's not even like in the moment. It's not like I knew what I was doing. You kind of react. And then it's like, well, I was out there last night. I'm going to stay out there because I made connections with people, right? And I'm saying the people's history, like, we cannot glorify history as if there is no cost and there is no pain. And it actually, like, I'm going to be honest with you. If you push me to the wall and you talk to me about would you do Ferguson again, I don't know that I would say yes. Do you understand how traumatized I was by that? I have a 3-week cycle out of Ferguson that I do that's helped me heal. I see my chiropractor because I store all of my pain in my back. I see my therapist because I need someone who will just talk to me and help me understand that that isn't me and I'm not that. And I get a full body massage so that those internal toxins that get inside of us get worked out.
Some healers in here. Repeat those 3 things again. That's good.
I mean, I'm telling you, like, I want, well, that's what I'm saying, is like, there is a cost. And I had moments with my 3 daughters, and my highest aspiration in my life is to be a present dad to my daughters, and I had moments where I would break down and cry with them.
We do a disservice to ourselves and to our communities of faith when we promote this work with the idea that everything is hunky-dory, that there's no sacrifice, there's not a challenge, because this work does cost. And if you're going to do it well, it's going to even cost even greater. And so that was one of my things that I wanted to share, that we need to realize that if we think that we're just going to do this and get a plaque, and somebody's going to smile at us, we're in the wrong game. Particularly with regards to what you were saying, that sometimes we're going to be like, have an idea like we're like Jeremiah, when nobody comes in, nobody's on our side, nobody seems, but it's necessary. It's necessary if what we're doing is right and good and godly. It's necessary because sometimes what we do is lay the foundation for what is yet to come. And it's not our time anyway. But also that these issues, particularly telling our stories, become foundational for generations who need to hear it so that they can tell their story. What has happened, I will tell you this, what has happened between 1963 and today is that we forgot to tell our story. And that's why they've watered down the civil rights gains that we've made, because we have forgot to tell our stories. And so our children, I'm of that generation now. I'm no longer, I can't be called to do any youth service. But there was not the sense that I needed to understand. In 68, I was 14 years old. And so I recognized it, but my mother kept me from going. She didn't want me to be put in harm's way. But that's only been delayed
Yeah.
some 30-some years. Because I'm in the same boat now that I would have been then.
Right.
You know, a little longer in the tooth, but part of where I stand today has to be recognizing that if what I'm called to do and called to be, and from my avocation by the God that loves me, then this means I've got to do more than just present this as if this were a fanciful tale and everything is going to be tied up in a nice little bow, and you know I'm going to be unscathed when everything is finished, because it's not that. And I'll say this and I'll finish. Even in my own church family, I've had folks attack internally
Yes.
for the issues that I saw as being God-given.
Right.
So if you've got thin skin, realize you're going to bleed a whole lot.
Yeah.
Even if you've got thick skin, you're going to bleed. But there's an issue that I believe that comes out of this, and I believe when we do this love fest that we're talking about here, I believe makes it all worthwhile. Because if what little bit I can do right now makes a difference for a brother or sister some 5 or 10 years from now, it's been worth it.
Can't hear.
As organizers, as a community organizer, first thing you have to do is find the common denominator in everybody to bring them together. And to sustain what we're talking about, I'm convinced, and maybe I'm here for this today, the common denominator is love. And that's what he just explained. And if we can drive that, everything else will come to us. If we get downstream the way some things happen, then we're going to lose. So the upstream piece is to figure out how to embrace love for everybody, what everybody's experience is, and then we can sustain it. If we don't, we're going to end up in the same situation. I'm going to follow up on the 1968 thing, because the meditation I've had through all of this, because everybody begins to start talking about either throwing money at the problems and blaming the kids, and we get into the same cycle that happened in 1968. I was not there, but it is clear to me that if we do the same thing, we're going to get the same results. So what we should study is what we did wrong and throw it out. So that's about
It's been wonderful hearing all the conversation that's been going on. You know, on to pose the question, because I'm not really sure what the outline of today and what we were saying, but if we could maybe move towards figuring out, you know, because we all come from various backgrounds, various religious affiliations, and it's so wonderful that we all come here for one common purpose, and you know, with love. There's so much love in this room. You can feel it. And I was thinking if we could move the conversation to maybe figuring out what the next steps are as, you know, the community that we have just built, people in this room, and how we can make, you know, a systemic change. You know, maybe we won't see it in our lifetime, but how we can start that or help continue that ever-growing change that's needed, and going to see how we can work with the different communities that are present here, work together, bringing, you know, our communities together for this one common purpose, and how maybe we can continue this work after today. I'm not sure if that was.
So let me get one more comment and then suggest the next, 2 more comments and then suggest the next step, because that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I want to follow up a little bit. I'm just so full, so I'll try to get this out. Sustainability, I think, is really key, really important, and so if we can talk some about that, some more about that in our next steps, I think that'd be really good. I'm going to say something and I'm going to walk away from it, okay? So, I'm not trying to beat the gay drum, but I am beating the gay drum, okay? Okay? So I'm walking now back to that after I did my self-talk around. I can talk about the gay drum. And that is, when I saw the riots, the recent riots, not only in Baltimore, but in Ferguson as well, and even the demonstrations, it made me think about 40-some years ago in the gay movement in Stonewall. And for those who don't know about Stonewall, that's when we gay folks, LGBT folks, finally came to terms with, we're tired of police brutality, we're tired of police abusing us, and coming into our establishments where we are just trying to be with one another and have a little fun, and just not be exposed to, people thinking us weird, and whatever that meant. And police coming in and just ongoing abuse. Now, I wasn't there, but that story got told to me. The stories were told to me. And I'm over 40, but I wasn't gay when I came out the womb in terms of my understanding. I came to understand that early on, though. And so it took a long time for me to navigate through the church to even learn about myself. And hearing those stories gave me hope, gave me courage to know that there was a possibility that I could live a whole life. And so the movement just built by telling the story.